welcome to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm Dr. Greer, and I'd like to thank the folks at the World Fusion Network for hosting us here every 2 weeks and giving us time to update folks on the OrionProject.org and CSETI.org and DisclosureProject.org. And I'm very excited to have a really special guest today with us, Amardeep Kaleka, who is doing the film Sirius with us, and many of you, of course, have been following the work we're doing at Sirius.neverendinglight.com to crowdfund from the public an historic movie, feature film, that will focus on the Disclosure Project, CSETI Contacts, New Energy, and our vision for creating a new and sustainable civilization on this planet. And so I'd like to thank ARM for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
So, of course, many of you have heard of the terrible tragedy that happened at the Sikh Temple in Wisconsin, where ARM's dad was killed by this maniac white supremacist, and it sort of illustrates the need for us to have a total change in consciousness in how we live on this planet and treat each other. And, of course, our deepest condolences go to ARM and his family, and to all the people in the Sikh community there and around the world who suffered this very unjust and grievous event. And I'd just like to thank ARM for continuing on with his work with this film Sirius in light of this tragedy that happened just about 4 weeks ago. And ARM, so thank you very much. And if you would like to make a few comments about that to the public, I know many people have been asking questions and probably would like to hear from you.
Absolutely. It's quite difficult. I was amazed by the support from the Sirius group and all of the people that subscribe and have helped crowdfund the film. I got a lot of positive energy. The tragedy, I know a lot of you have been following it and watching interviews or watching things on it. I want to say a couple of things from behind the scenes. The gentleman, I'll say the unfortunate human being that did this, was not anywhere associated with a conspiracy. He was associated with a hate group, one that had lived in that area for quite a while, and then his girlfriend had contacts with the temple for quite a while, long before I ever knew Dr. Greer or long before Sirius had ever come about. Needless to say, there are things in the zeitgeist or, in the universe that you cannot control. And sometimes maybe when we're going after change or we're going after a revolution, bad things might happen because of that, because there's one current. In our religion, we talk about it all the time. There's a current that we're all riding on when we send our energy and thoughts and consciousness into the air. And sometimes when you stand against that current, negative things happen. Having that said, I've been told by my family and told by my friends that this film is important. This film is something to work on in order to make that change happen or in order to make that current flow in the right direction. So that's why I continued on, because a lot of family and friends supported me through the decision. There was a time where I was a little bit, I didn't know what was happening, or I didn't know what was happening behind the situation, so I didn't, there was a point where we were making that decision of whether or not to stop or go through, but once we had more information, once we had the support from Dr. Greer and the other subscribers on Sirius, and once my family and friends, most importantly, supported me in the decision, I decided to continue on.
Well, thank you for doing so. And bringing people up to date is part of what this show is about. And there's we've just spent about 3 days out at my farm in Virginia, and where we were interviewing some really important people to this project, people who helped set up, for example, our briefings for the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the meetings that we had at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where the deceased extraterrestrial bodies and parts of spacecraft have been sent over the years, and particularly in the early days, and also interviewing members of the CSETI CE5 contact team, and also doing some contact events out at the farm. So we've done a lot to get these sort of people documented over since Saturday, and this past Saturday. And right now we are at my place in Washington, D.C., interviewing an Air Force major who had some amazing encounters and who was actually present at the McGuire Air Force Base when an ET was shot and killed on the tarmac, tragically, and many other great pieces of information that disclosure witness has. And we're going to be also interviewing a former Defense Intelligence Agency scientist and some other people here in the Washington area. So it's an exciting trip, and it's all part of making the Sirius neverendinglife.com movie a reality. And as we sit here in Washington, it's sort of it's sobering because my place overlooks the city. We're looking out over the Washington Monument and the White House and the Congress. And being here all the time, it brings to my mind how much real change we need to have in the way our civilization is organized, because the average person in senior government positions in this city here in Washington have absolutely no idea about what's going on in these super secret classified programs. And in fact, the gentleman we just interviewed, who had worked many years in the Air Force, said that ironically he would often meet with incredibly senior, high-ranking people, and he knew more about the subject than they did, and that routinely they were not given information. And a friend of his knew Gerald Ford, and even as President of the United States, Gerald Ford confirmed this contact that he did not know and was never briefed properly on this subject. So this is a matter of great significance. And one of the things that it will be a focus of this film is not only the evidence and the courageous military men and women who come forward to give testimony, but to also explain how far we need to develop in terms of a truly democratic society so that this information can come out properly and we can benefit, all of us together globally, in a new world with these sorts of technologies and sciences and contact that's peaceful. And this is really the big challenge of our generation that is not being focused on in Washington or London or any other world capital yet. And we're hoping that this film, Sirius, will make a big change in how the world perceives this issue and how it begins to take a responsible role in dealing with this information in a proper way and making really positive change happen in the world.
And I can jump in right there because I want to take a conversation a little further into how we're going to do this in terms of a documentary, because we only have a limited amount of time, about between 100 and 120 minutes to hold the conversation. And one of the initial things we talked about, Dr. Greer, was we're going to give a lot of information, but it will be the tip of the iceberg. There will be a whole lot of information behind that where people can, once we invigorate their mind and their spirit and their emotion, will be able to go and search and research and get the information they need on each particular category, because there's a lot of it. I mean, this is a tremendously large subject. It's immense in terms of its scope, and it affects every human being on this planet. Baby, adult, elderly, it affects everybody. And the other way we're gonna attempt to do this is I want to fill everybody in on the Sirius lecture event. This is one lecture that Dr. Greer will be doing, and in order to not make a documentary where we have 1,000 talking heads, one way to fix that problem was to do a lecture, an event, where you see a presentation in front of you in a very concise manner, and there's audience members that are there. I think tickets are still being sold, but I think we're doing pretty good on ticket sales, and we want more people to come in and fill it up. It'll be in West Santa Monica, right by the beach, at the Broad Street Theater, and it's going to be an amazing event. But that one shoot, we call it the Sirius Lecture event, will help carry us throughout the film to concisely tell you the story about this immense subject. At the same time, we'll splinter from that one event and do vignettes and cover other topics and take it all around the nation and the world in the search for the answers and the questions, the right questions, in order to get the information out to the normal public. So that's going to be our modus operandi in this next upcoming 3 to 6 months.
Yes, and those of you who are in Southern California or perhaps even Arizona and Nevada, this is going to be on Sunday, September 16th at the Broad Stage Theater there in Santa Monica. Information about it is at sirius.neverendinglife.com. And so if you want to come to this event, you can be part of the movie and part of history, and it'd be great to see a lot of the people from the World Fusion Network who have been great supporters of what we're doing at this event. So please come if you're free, and I hope to see you there. And one of the things that's exciting, I mean, just sort of I'll give you an update. As many of you know from disclosureproject.org, we have already filmed up during that project about 110 military and corporate and intelligence officers and secret witnesses to UFO events and projects. And what I did some years ago was to edit that down to 35 hours, what I call the director's cut. At that point, I was the director. And so I did the best I could, being an amateur. I mean, I'm just a country doctor from Virginia, and I don't pretend to be a filmmaker, but I did a good cut of the really meat of those witnesses, and those have all been given and transferred digitally over to Arm and his team at Never Ending Life, and they've also been receiving from us a lot of new witnesses and information that's come in since then in the last decade, and also dozens of pages of top secret documents that when they were out at my farm, they were able to scan and photograph that are some of the most important government documents in the world, including some that, frankly, no one in the world has yet seen. And this whole body of evidence is then added to the most extraordinary photos and videos in the world that we're collecting that have been given to them, and also some amazing hard evidence that we're pursuing, both landing trace cases, but also, as many of you have heard, this possible deceased extraterrestrial biological entity that Dr. Bravo and Emory Smith and I are investigating, and we have a lot of news on that I'll get to in a moment, but it's an enormous amount. I mean, you really have at least a 30 or 40 hour, 1 or 2 year series that could be done from the material we already have, and so the Promethean task for our entire team is to get this into a 2-hour feature film that holds together and conveys the information. But I think what Arm was saying is so important. What we really want to do at some point, if we have the funding to do it, is to develop a really well-integrated website where the archives of all these witness testimonies, documents, images, material, and what have you, could be on a site that would be easy to navigate, that would be a compendium, if you want to look at it that way, to the movie, and would expand people's ability, once they see this 2-hour film, to then go and drill down, say, on just like this one interview we did this afternoon here in Washington, which was about an hour and a half, and it was chock full of amazing information. But, of course, you know, we won't be able to put an hour and a half of this one person's testimony in a 2-hour movie. So we're just going to have to take a few little clips from it to give people a sense of it and create this narrative. But there's so much information, and I think once this film comes out, we're going to see the curiosity and the inquiries on this subject go up exponentially. And so part of what we want to achieve, and this is something we want to do by folks helping us with this, by the generous contributions you've made at Sirius.neverendinglight.com, is to be able to develop a multimedia approach to this. The film almost becomes like a portal, and then you go into the film and see it, and then when you want to find out more about the new energy technologies or about the science of consciousness and transdimensional technologies, or about the witnesses in the military and government around the world, all the ones that we've collected, the documents, all these could be in files or in windows that you could enter from the main portal of the movie. So this is something that we would really like to be able to do. But of course, it's all dependent on staffing and time and funding, but this is why the more that folks can support this effort, the more that we'll be able to do this in a way that will be impactful.
I just want to take a second to jump in, and I want to let you guys know, some of the things that I see while I'm shooting, they're sending chills up my spine. We walked into an evidence closet at Dr. Greer's place and probably had well over, 60, 70 boxes of evidence, and it's really hard to organize. I know it's a lot of information, and people have been submitting a ton of stuff. But when you pull it out and you start looking through the documents, you start looking through the little vials with sand in them, and you start seeing pictures and images, and you start shooting all these things. It is a lot of evidence. There's a lot of evidence out there in the world. There's a lot of evidence that people are just forgetting. People don't do their homework. People don't read. People are busy with their lives that the world matrix has created in front of them. And jumping into that spider web, they forget to go underneath and really check the terra firma. And that's what we're doing with this documentary. We're going down deep and finding the best truth for you guys, the best information, so that you will understand after watching the film a little bit more about the earth that we live on and the universe that we all inhabit and that we're all together in. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank Dr. Greer for letting us in that part of his life, and his family as well. I wanted to thank them for opening up those closets, even though there's some of them were a little bit dark and disorganized, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah, well, people have no idea that, it's 22 years that we've been gathering this information, and a lot of people think that because the largest event in the history of the National Press Club in its history was the Disclosure Project event 11 years ago, not the biggest internet event, the biggest event, period. It was eventually seen by almost 1 billion people. The Voice of America covered it, that has shortwave and others, somewhere around 300 million around the world. I debated Seth Shostak of the SETI Project, along with some of our top secret witnesses and people like John Callahan, who had the FAA taped. And if you begin to go into any one of these boxes, then you uncover, here's a case where an ET craft landed and left physical evidence. And the people in Italy who had it handed it over to me. And it's sitting there. We have reports and documents from institutes that have been taken out of the vault of the National Security Agency and of other places that are unique and have been or exist nowhere else. Same thing with photos and videos. And there's just so much material. And I think that what we really want to do with this movie has a lot to do with consciousness, and that's why the World Puja Network supporters have been so important, is that you really cannot understand the evidence and how these civilizations have come to be on Earth without understanding this nexus where consciousness, high voltage electromagnetism and gravity, and physical space-time all come together, and there is a nexus. And this is the big secret that no UFO organization talks about and no show has ever talked about. And that's because this is the Rosetta Stone of not only making contact, but understanding both our distant past and the origins of the human race, but also our future. And our future, not just on Earth, but in space, has to do with an understanding of higher states of consciousness, non-locality of mind, and the fact that interstellar civilizations that are visiting Earth are using technologies that use very high voltage systems that create a vector or an angular, if you want to look at angular momentum from space-time into other dimensions, and these are the worlds of light and thought and so-called astral energy and other subtle forms. And that's how they're communicating and traveling across the vastness of space. They are not making a beeline from point A to B, staying in linear space-time. They're actually dropping out of linear space-time into another dimension and then re-emerging at, say, Earth or Saturn or over by the moon. And this understanding of how these advanced sciences, space sciences, and advanced energy technologies interface and are part of an understanding of thought and consciousness. What is the energy of thought? What is the energy of mind? How does that interface with communicating between here and the Andromeda galaxy? These are really profound and interesting questions, and it needs to be explored, because otherwise you get into a very teleologic, really a very superficial sort of phenomenological view of this, where you say, well, I saw a craft or this thing is here. But the bigger question is, why are they here? How did they get here? What's behind this? What is this showing us about the human future that is so exciting? And in a sense, if we're looking at these extraordinary extraterrestrial evidences and contact experiences, it's really showing us the potential for the human family living together in an incredibly advanced, higher consciousness civilization without poverty and without pollution, using these advanced free energy and anti-gravity technologies, so that our children easily, within 20 years, would see a world so transformed that the world today would seem more foreign 20 years from now than the caveman era would look to us, that there could be that much transformation if we come together as a people and support disclosure not only of the evidence and facts, but of the science and the technology, and have it guided by this understanding of the consciousness of universal peace, where in order for us to go forward, the only possible future is a peaceful one. You cannot go forward using the kinds of technologies we have today, never mind guns and missiles and nuclear bombs, but these sort of really advanced technologies that are interstellar and transdimensional, they have to be brought to bear to benefit the Earth and humanity, but they can only be used peacefully. So this becomes a very big existential question, and in a sense crisis that we have been facing on Earth for about 100 years, and that's one of the key points we want to elucidate in this film.
And I think I can't remember who exactly told me this, but it's not a problem of science, or it's not a problem of scientific knowledge or information. It's a problem of human spirit. I think what happened on August 5th epitomized what's been happening on this planet for far too long, where there's one person who attacks a peaceful congregation. And I know most of the people in the world are good people. Most of the people in the world are peace-loving people and want tranquility and harmony. But that there is a small percentage, there is a small group of people, whether or not it's conspiratory or they collaborate, or whether it's become the human, genome up to now. For some reason, that small group will attack a large group and then take a lot of the credit and make the world feel like a dark and nasty place. So as a congregation with our Sikh culture, and I know many of you have been following this when I go on TV or CNN, or I'm doing a speaker series right now. We're doing something called Project Harmony, and we're trying to harmonize and we say sangify, because for us the world is grouped into sanghas or sanghas, where it's a group of meditators or a congregation. And currently, for you guys who are a part of this movement, a lot of what Dr. Greer is telling you is a lot of information, and it could be above your head at this point. But I do urge you to join a Sangha or a Sangha or a group of people that are in the know on this information. Collaborate and communicate with each other in order to elucidate each other and get yourselves to be strong in that collaboration. And you can all start with even the people with the disclosure team or C-Study. All of them know what they're talking about, and this is a good place to start. And it also helps you to have people that can support you, because there is a large amount of ridicule out there in the world, especially about this topic. And it doesn't help anybody when you might have an experience or you know of things, but you can't talk about it because you feel the ridicule is too heavy, or you might lose your job. We need to get people to group together and speak up at the right time. And this seems to be the right time. 2012 is about to close. A lot of things are happening on the planet that we don't want to happen. Maybe it's a good time for all the peace-loving, tranquil, harmonic people in the world to speak up and say, look, this has happened. I know this. Deep down in my soul, I feel this to be true. Or physically, I've seen it, and I'm not scared to talk about it. So I just want to urge people towards that solution moving in the future.
Yeah, and the other thing that's a great support for folks interested in this and in making contact, if you go to cseti.org, there's a global CE5 initiative. Now, Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind is our project when we go out and meditate together and remote view ET civilizations and craft and invite them to visit us here on Earth in the framework of universal consciousness and universal peace. But whereas we used to do this in a way that was sort of everyone was on their own little team, now there's this entire community. And, for example, a couple of weeks ago, there were dozens of teams from 14 countries that went out the same evenings to do this while we were up on Mount Shasta. And it creates this amazing shift in consciousness and in the morphogenic field that supports each other and all the work that we're trying to do together. And, this gets back to looking at some of the studies that have been done by Dr. John at Princeton and Rupert Sheldrake, the work that has been done by Dean Radin and others, where they found that if people are meditating together or doing something in prayer or doing something just thinking together, that it has an exponentially greater effect than if you're doing it by yourself, if you're isolated by yourself. And if those two people are connected in harmony and love each other, unified, the effect is exponentially greater. It's not just arithmetically greater. It's not like two people have twice the effect. Two people have 10 times the effect. And so then when you have dozens and then hundreds and then thousands, and now, once this film comes out, millions of people who will understand this dynamic of morphogenic fields, this sort of 100th monkey effect, and the power of consciousness and non-locality of mind and higher states of consciousness, this is what could really lay the foundation for a new civilization, because it really is about the human spirit and consciousness, much more so than even the science and technologies, because let's face it, if we bring out another generation of energy and propulsion systems, but mankind uses those for the same kind of stupid things we've done with, for example, nuclear weapons and nuclear power and splitting the atom. Einstein died grievously saddened that some of his discoveries ended up in the creation of the atomic bomb and what happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So I think that we have to understand that this really is where the biggest change has to happen, and that the world kind of is as we are. And so we have to become people who can live this way. And I think part of it, speaking to what Arm just shared about, one, nut job can just make a real mess for things. A lot of people have to understand that people coming together can have a huge force that is healing and transformative. But often, the good people stand by sort of apathetically and passively, while the aggressive and violent people get all the attention and suck up all the air out of the room. And I lived in Israel and in the Middle East for 3 years, and I saw that whether somebody was Muslim or whether they were Christian or Jewish or Baha'i or whatever, almost everyone I knew just wanted to live together and in peace. They could respect the fact people had different worldviews. They all felt there was a supreme being, call it what you will. And yet it took a very small number of people to blow up the bus I was on that almost killed me. It took a very small number of people to blow up the market where I was buying oranges one morning and was almost killed. So what you find is that we, as the people who believe in peace and believe in a new civilization, have to learn to be less apathetic. We have to become engaged. We have to do that. And this is really true. I have many people will tell me that they hear of this NJ12 or Majestic group that's keeping all of this information secret from the public. I said, yes, but they're only doing that because we, the people, our elected officials, the people who represent us, are abdicating their power and responsibility, and power abhors a vacuum. And so if you create a vacuum, these sort of elements will step into it. And that's how we ended up with World War I and World War II and all this other madness. And so it's really important for people to understand that this is a responsibility that isn't just on my shoulders or Arm's shoulders or President Obama's shoulder or whoever. It's each person has this responsibility in the collective of the human race and human consciousness. And that's why coming together to bring about disclosure, new energy, peaceful contact, all of these things is very, very empowering to yourself as an individual, but it's very empowering to society, because society can only move forward if we all take whatever measure we can of responsibility for the world we live in.
Yeah, I want to speak to that vacuum, especially when it comes to politics or politicians or leadership. We got to remind ourselves as a tranquil, peace-loving people that if we do not step up for service in the government, people will go in that have capitalistic, motivations, that have power-hungry egos, and we're doing that to ourselves by not doing the service jobs. We're doing that ourselves sometimes by not filling those voids. And I just want to take a second to let you guys know what we've been doing at the temple. We started a blood drive, and we invited every faith in the area. And what we're going to do is 6 when we generally pray. It's not really a prayer; it's just a meditation session. And so you have 200, 300 people congregating together to do a meditation, and then there's harmonic music being played, and that's supposed to lift the energy and the spirit. And there's no real priesthood. So nobody's really lecturing to you. They just are reading off scriptures. What we did was we invited all these different faiths to come to our temple and one by one come up and just read a scripture. And then while they're reading, when they're done reading the scripture, the harmonic music will play and you can meditate on it. And this is a simple way to group people, and I'm always looking for practical ways to show people that we can live together, we can live in peace and harmony. And if the problem is not really that of information, and it's just spirit, I think we can lift the spirit of the whole universe, or just this planet right away, and get people to, I guess, live by justice and truth and all the virtues that we all know to be paramount in doing the right thing. And then maybe that small little percentage of atypical human beings who want power and are doing very, very negative things, I think they'll back down, because either that or they'll be brainwashed by us good people by the time they get to be 25 or 30 years old. So I think this is all important stuff moving forward, and this film is definitely a step in that direction, even though it might seem like it's far away from where personally I need to be post August 5th. However, based on what my family and friends say, that they're like, your dad would have loved for you to succeed at this endeavor. And I didn't tell Dr. Greer this, but the day before August 5th happened, on Saturday night, my dad loved to tinker with motors and cars and lawnmowers and try to make them more efficient by just going in and kind of ripping things apart. And right before on Saturday night, me and him were just chatting, and then I'd go on YouTube and show him Stanley Meyer stuff, or I'd show him harmonic levitation, anti-graft stuff on YouTube, and he was just getting a kick out of it. And this is a 65-year-old, farmer who just was enjoying it. So I left him alone, and then I woke up the next morning, and he was like, I was up till 3 a.m. just looking at YouTube videos. And he was just so excited about the new world and the vision that people have for the new world. And so I knew that this film was important, not just to me, but to him and my family and friends. And obviously I know it's important to Dr. Greer, but it's also important to everybody out there. And we want to make sure we do the best job moving forward.
Indeed, and there's great potential to do something of historic significance here, because doing something that's beautiful and triggers people's higher spiritual and also heart and emotional context, which you can do in filmmaking that you can't do at a National Press Club event or just a lecture, is very empowering, but also it activates a level of consciousness and heart and motivation. And that's really what's needed to potentiate this whole process. And in a sense, most people who end up stumbling across the information in Disclosure Project, oh my God, I had no idea all this existed. In fact, recently, two medical doctors who live near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, near Dayton, Ohio, came to Charlottesville, Virginia, where I have a farm, and met with Dr. Bravo and me and my wife, and they said, we just sort of accidentally came across this, and it's so affirming, because they knew that a lot of this was true, because the one doctor had some patients who at Wright-Patterson that had confirmed to him that there had been ET-related material and what have you there, and the other one, that his wife, had kept a secret from him for some 30 or 40 years, and that is when she was much younger and she was camping in the wilderness around sunset, and E.T. craft flew over and hovered over the lake while her friend was chopping some wood or gathering some wood for the evening, and it was this amazing life-changing event that she had never spoken of, and she'd been married to this man for 30 or 40 years, and he didn't know about it until he pulled out the disclosure book and turned to her and said, do you know this is really true? And she says, oh, yes. Let me tell you this experience I had when I think she was 18 or 19, very young and in college. And he was astonished. He said, well, why had you never told me about this? She said, well, this is the sort of thing you don't talk about unless you want someone to think that you're nuts or something, So it was interesting. Here they were married all those years, and it wasn't until this man came across the disclosure book and saw the information, realized this was real, that they even shared with each other this deep, dark secret. And it's sort of, I take that as sort of a microcosm of what has happened a million times since we did the Disclosure Project, but needs to happen, 7 billion more times for the planet, since there's 7 billion people here. And already there's so much interest in this subject. If you look at internet traffic, if you look at movies, if you look at the Ancient Alien series, which has become one of the biggest franchises in the history of cable TV and what have you, the interest on this subject is enormous. But the true story and the significance of it has almost never been told in a way that's compelling and comprehensive, and that's what's exciting about doing the Sirius.neverendinglight.com. And at this point, I think we're one of the top public crowdfunded endeavors in history. I don't know. I think ARM can speak to this, and it speaks to the fact of the number of people who so much want to see this happen.
Absolutely. We're in the top 20 right now of crowdfunded documentaries, and we're in the neophyte stage of crowdfunding, and we're at that point where we can start doing social good and start doing documentaries that have social causes backed by the people who want to see the message get out. And that's a breakthrough in entertainment, because entertainment, and I talk about this a lot when I lecture, entertainment's a double-edged sword. It's using mass media, light and harmonics and sound, music, to actually send out information. You can also use that information. You can use that media to brainwash people, much like Hitler did. And it's proven that you can, send out light waves and sound waves and brainwash people. And so as a free society with the right to free speech, we ourselves have to check that responsibility and monitor what we do with the public airways, because people have to remember the sky and the air is ours. It's the public's. Nobody else owns it. We own it. So having that said, this is an amazing step moving forward, and I think it was amazing because we were talking to George Filer today, and he said maybe of all the files that he gets, and maybe he's estimating 1/3 or a quarter of the actual encounters or cases that could be reported. That's amazing to think, because if he's getting millions of cases or thousands of cases, how many are going unreported? And of course, I say this a lot when I'm talking about how many times somebody with a turban gets attacked in America. And when they get a brick thrown through their window, they don't say anything because they just think, okay, I'm just going to fix my window. I don't want to cause a big, ruckus or a hubbub. It's even worse if that brick was thrown through your window and then you would get yelled at, or you would get ridiculed for having that brick thrown through your window. And that type of ridicule is happening right now. It's not that a lot of people are finding themselves in this situation and then they put themselves there. Some things are happening to people, whether it be a sighting or a meeting of another person who tells them information, or just being put into a job where one time you didn't think you were going to be in top secret positions, and then they just push you that way, and then now you know something that you are going to be ridiculed about. And that happened even with some people we interviewed. They didn't realize that just by chasing a UFO that their career would stop, because all of a sudden their file would have UFO right on top of it. So I think we as a society have to stop that ridiculing, but that starts by putting this in the mainstream media and getting people to understand that this exists. And it shouldn't be a ridicule. It should be a discussion. That discussion point is going to start with our film, with Sirius, but I'm hoping that it just rattles down the chain and everybody's discussions move towards a more enlightened situation.
The reason this is so important that people take responsibility and have taken responsibility for both funding, but also when the day is done, after the initial rollout of the film, and people said, where's it going to appear? We don't know all that yet. We're still in the up to our eyeballs and alligators trying to get this thing produced and in the can and post-production and what have you. But eventually it will be available all over the world in some form. What's really important for people to understand is that each person, in a sense, is going to become a distributor as well. It's been publicly funded. The public will then be responsible for through Facebook and Twitter and their own websites, getting the word out. And that's how this can happen in the most effective way, because the big media empires are rarely going to step into something that allows the truth to come out. For example, you can have people on Fox or CNN saying, well, there may be a sighting of a UFO somewhere. They do not want people coming forward who know about the energy and propulsion sciences and technologies that would cause the $600 trillion oil and commodity market to be replaced with a socially and environmentally just energy system for the entire planet, because you're then stepping on the toes of very large corporate conglomerates, and those are the guys who are funding the big national, international political entities. So when you look at this, it really has to be very grassroots, not only from the funding of it, the creation of it, but if you look at even the witness and evidence that we have in there, we have people like Paula Harris, who for over 30 years has interviewed Dr. J. Allen Hynek, Colonel Corso, Minister of Defense Paul Hellyer. She's given us everything she has. We have people like Dr. Lynn Katai, who took some of the best and original video and photos of the Phoenix Lights and the events that happened both before and after and since then. She's a fellow medical doctor who has said, look, you guys can use anything I have. We have Michael Hesseman in Germany, who has collected the best archive of photos and videos in the world and is cooperating with getting these to us. We have people who are these military witnesses, like the people we're interviewing here in Washington this week, who are coming forward, and we're not paying for interviews. They're coming here under their own good graces because they believe it's time for the world to know the truth, because they've seen the truth, they know it's real. So this is really what it's about, and that's how change happens, meaningful change happens. And that's why I tell people and say, people ask me, well, how's disclosure? I said, well, we're doing disclosure. Everyone says, well, when is the president? I said, well, here's a short note, cliff notes on the presidency. Bill Clinton called the White House the crown jewel of the federal prison system, and I'm quoting. And the reality is that the people I briefed here in Washington on a regular basis, Senate Intelligence Committee members, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, chairman of the House Government and Oversight Committee, Senate Appropriations Committee chairman, writes all the checks for the U.S. government, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is basically as large as the CIA, but it's in the Pentagon, the CIA director, on and on and on. And these are all people I personally have briefed. Basically what you find is that in almost every case, no matter how high their rank and position, they have not had access to these clandestine compartmented projects. And so our democratic levers of control and supervision and support have been completely subverted. And this is exactly what Thomas Jefferson warned about when he talked about the unchecked power of the corporation, I'm quoting, and also what five-star general and Republican, I might add, President Eisenhower said when he said beware of the military-industrial complex because of the secrecy being a threat to our democracy. And he said that because he had been a victim of this happening under his watch in the 1950s. And then you also have the comment from Senator Inouye, who said that there's a secret government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own funding mechanism that's free from the law and above the law itself. I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty close to what he said. And we have this clip, and it will be in the movie. And so what you find is that as you go through history over the last 100 years, actually, this is not a recent phenomenon. Woodrow Wilson said some things that I've seen recently that Annie else put together for a video update for you guys to see that I hope will come out soon. Basically, we have a long history of these sort of interests hijacking our democracy and the society we live in. And the only way that's going to change is from the people knowing the truth and then the people insisting on change. It cannot happen from the top down because in this case, the top's been decapitated. And this is what most people don't understand. I know I'm sitting here with Dr. Ted Loder, who's our science advisor, and a few years ago we had these senior French officials in this condo here in Washington, and they sat in dismay and amazement, and they were appalled to hear from our military advisor, Commander Will Miller, that we had had these sort of high-level briefings in Washington in the Pentagon, and that every one of these senior officials who are admirals and generals had been denied access to projects that we know are going on and can prove are going on, that it is such a dysfunctional mess. And this is why when people say, well, when and who and how is disclosure, I said it's us. It's us.
Absolutely. And I wanted to take a second just to let you know how impressed I am with Dr. Loder. We did our initial interview, and it's amazing how open and candid he is and how down to earth he describes things in such a way that you get it. And I want to tell the public, this is a lot of years of information. We're talking about people researching and spending well over 60, 70 hours a week on this research to crystallize it in this one film. So we're talking about maybe, let's say, 100 years worth of mind knowledge being crystallized into this 2 hours, which is exactly why it's difficult. And we all get that. But it's amazing to think that you, the public, will have the ability to have this served to you in a very concise and emotionally moving meal, and you'll be able to take that information and move it on to other people. So it's a very exciting time for us. It's a very exciting time for, I guess, the society in general, and I'm glad to be a part of it, and I take it as an honor, despite the setback of what happened in Wisconsin. I think there's a lot more good on this planet than there is bad, and I'm doing my best, and I know Dr. Greer is doing his best, Dr. Loder, everybody on this team, on this side, is working towards that harmony and that peace. And it might start as far away as, Andromeda. But at the end of the day, it's going to be brought right home to you and terra firma, and we're gonna see what happens moving forward.
And speaking of Andromeda, I don't know that this thing that we're investigating is from Andromeda, but I do want to give you a little update due to the support that has been forthcoming, and we do appreciate anything that folks can, if you can spread this and share this World Puja interview with other people and ask them to go to Sirius.neverendinglight.com to further support our effort. It will greatly assist us. We have green-lighted a mission to a foreign country that I cannot disclose to examine further this possible biological specimen that we think may be an extraterrestrial biological entity, an EBE. Many of you have asked a number of questions that we are not at liberty to answer. I cannot say where the being came from, who has it, what country we're going to, because I've been asked not to. And this is nothing I can control. This is respecting the privacy and confidentiality and, frankly, the security of the people who have this potentially amazing being. I will say that one of the top geneticists and medical doctors who deal with genetic anomalies and skeletal defects and what have you have already reviewed the images of the pictures of this being. It is not any known primate. It is not any known hominid, meaning the predecessor to Homo sapiens. It is not any known human genetic defect yet. And so this is a process of exclusion as much as anything. So this trip is going to be a rather complex and frankly costly one. We're going over there with full medical and forensic level sampling capabilities, because what our plan is to first get a number of x-rays that have been requested by a medical doctor who is the world's expert on skeletal malformations and congenital defects. Then we're going to be getting an MRI scan of the entire body from head to toe, every single structure we can image. And then once we get those images, we're going to get precise down to the millimeter calibrations and measurements so that we can then go in with a fine needle biopsy and hopefully take some both DNA material and some proteinaceous material, like protein or muscular material from inside the chest wall cavity, which to our best of knowledge is virginal. It is intact. To our knowledge, it has not been breached and therefore should not be contaminated with environmental bacteria and fungi and yeast and what have you. So we're going to be doing this under very careful forensic procedures. These samples, as well as some samples to do extremely advanced carbon dating techniques that Dr. Loader is heading up, will be done. And those samples will be handed off person to person and will be supervised. And the scientists that are doing the genetic, the skeletal, and the carbon dating techniques are the absolute top in the world, frankly. And so this is going to be a very important investigation. We don't know where it may lead. It may, in fact, lead to the fact that we discover at some point that this was perhaps an aborted fetus, some very bizarre skeletal form. So far, that's not the case. We're also going to be trying to look a little further into Lloyd Pye's skull that he has, because this year he got some genetic tests done. We would like to do more genetic tests on that if he's cooperative, because our geneticist, quite frankly, is the top in the world and in terms of techniques. So we're hoping we can get all these things done for inclusion in the film Sirius. which is why we have put it on an expedited timeline. So I wanted to give you this update because those of you who are listening I know have been asking, and also thank you very much contributing so we can do this. I want to point out that all of us on the Sirius team doing this are doing this pro bono, meaning there is no one, not even these top drawer Ivy League geneticists and doctors, are charging for their services. The only expenses are the ones that are direct out-of-pocket costs to do it, which are still substantial. Obviously, we have to pay for MRI scans and X-rays, and we have to pay for certain things. But the personnel, Dr. Bravo, Emery Smith, myself, Dr. Loader, this geneticist, and the other top medical doctors who are examining all of this material are doing it without charge, which is quite remarkable, actually. So, I'm saying that we're probably going to get, $500,000 in research done for $30,000 or something. So it's very exciting. We're going to see where it leads, and we hope at least that some of these findings can make their way into the movie.
And I know we're running out at that limit of the time, but thank you for having me, Dr. Greer. And I will say that, having that EBE in this film gives us that crescendo or smoking gun, and it's an important element. And we've always been discussing it for maybe, past 3 or 4 months. But I also would like to thank the supporters out there who have gone to Sirius.neverendinglight.com in order to make that happen. I know we'll be rolling out some more update videos. I look forward to updating people on the behind the scenes of the film, the newsletter everywhere. And if you guys are in Wisconsin or anywhere nearby, we're inviting everybody to the temple. It's open 24 hours a day, and we come in for meditation sessions, and we call it Project Harmony. So people have been coming from as far away as Australia and China to come and pay their respects and tribute. So feel free. You have my invitation on this podcast. If I'm in the city or if I'm around there, I'll come personally meet you there. But if I'm not, it's a really easy situation. You just go in and meditate, have a mantra in mind, or have something that you want to meditate on. Vipassana meditation, you just listen to the music and meditate and then eat. And it's one of the most peaceful places on this planet right now. So
thank you. Well, thank you, Arm, for taking the time to do this show with us. And I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us every 2 weeks. So stay tuned. And those of you who want to find out more about the Sirius Film Project, you can go to Sirius.neverendinglight.com and to disclosureproject.org and cseti.org. So until next time, keep looking up. God bless you all, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.